Merry Christmas everybody, and we're back for more Yakuza. I'm kinda hoping to make this an annual thing around the holiday season, or at least until I possibly cave in and turn it into a marathon of Yakuza games. Last time when we first looked into the series, we talked about Yakuza Kiwami, a remake of the original PS2 title, which is how I started, and I believe many of you can too. I personally had a really good time with it, though after I did my initial playthrough, I noticed that there was another Yakuza game that's not only considered better, but perhaps the best one in the entire franchise. That game was Yakuza 0 from 2015, 1 year before Kiwami released. I got this as a Christmas gift a couple years ago, I think only a few weeks after I first completed Kiwami. Once I heard all the good things about it, I was really interested to see what we've got. And I honestly think this one is just a tad overrated. Alright, before you all kill me, let me make it clear that I do like Yakuza 0. As a matter of fact, there are some things about it that I actually think is better than Kiwami, and I can see why the game is held in such high regard. But the best in the series? I'm sorry, I just don't feel that way. This is gonna be one of the trickiest reviews I've done in a long while in terms of getting my point across without coming off as a spiteful asshole. I guess the best place to start would be the plot. Like with the Kiwami review, I won't go into any major spoilers, but I'll try my hardest to explain my thoughts without giving too much away. As the name of the game may suggest, Yakuza 0 is a prequel set at the beginning of the timeline. It's December 1988, still taking place in the city of Kamurocho, and we're once again placed in the shoes of Kazuma Kiryu, based on his early days as a Yakuza member, who's collecting money from this random guy. Later on, that same man is reported dead on the news, and the blame immediately gets put on Kiryu, since he was the last one who saw him, much to the dismay of the Dojima family that Kiryu's a part of, with the 3 lieutenants believing that he did the deed, and Kiryu's foster father having to take the fall. They advise Kiryu to turn himself to the police to avoid risking the entire family being investigated, but he refuses to claim guilty for a crime he didn't commit, so the only way to ensure Kiryu's and his father's safety is for him to leave the Yakuza, which can only be done by speaking with the Patriarch. However, the lieutenants seem to be trying to prevent Kiryu from going any further, for they have their own devious plot. The Dojima family have basically bought nearly all of Kamurocho so that they can begin what they call the Kamurocho Revitalization Project, that's meant to be worth billions upon billions of yen. All that's left to buy is a tiny patch of land only a few square meters wide known as the Empty Lot, which just so happens to be the same place the man from earlier was murdered. Nobody seems to know who the owner of the Empty Lot is, but it's safe to say the Dojima family will do whatever they feel is necessary to retrieve it, so Kiryu has to battle through them to reach the Patriarch. After much convincing, he's eventually expelled from the family, now becoming an average citizen. This captures the attention of Tetsu Tachibana, a wealthy and powerful real estate owner who wishes to help clear Kiryu's name and stop the Dojima family from obtaining the Empty Lot, while also seeking out its owner, and the 3 lieutenants keep attempting to dispose of Kiryu for good. After discussing this sticky situation with Kiryu's best friend and sworn brother Nishikiyama, a major character from the first Yakuza game, Kiryu agrees to assist Tachibana and even gets shown the ways of real estate as a more honest living. Well, they still have to get into fights with Yakuza, so I guess a slightly more honest living. That's all story A anyway. Story B is set in Sotenbori from the perspective of Goro Majima, the unequivocal maniac from the other games who's a lot more calm and collected in his humble beginnings, as much as he can be at least. You see, Majima's been thrown out of the Yakuza himself and is now managing the Cabaret Grand, the most popular cabaret club in Sotenbori, under the supervision of Sagawa, the sworn brother of Majima's former Yakuza boss, as a means of forking over a huge sum of profit every month. These are also the same people that tortured Majima and took out his eye, but for some reason he's desperate to get back into the Yakuza business, to which he is hired by Sagawa to perform a hit on someone named Makoto Makimura, a pimp who's been working on Sagawa's territory without consultation. Majima eventually figures out that Makoto works at a massage clinic on the side and breaks in, but is interrupted by his blind assistant who works on Majima for a bit. Makoto comes back to the clinic shortly afterwards and tussles around with Majima for a bit, but then more Yakuza show up also looking for Makoto. They reveal that the man in front of us isn't actually Makoto, but rather the blind assistant. So something's not right here. Why would a sweet young blind lady require killing? What's the true story? Who is she really? Until Majima gets some answers, he changes his mind on taking out Makoto and and keeps her protected from Yakuza trying to hunt her down, learning more about her as the game goes on. Things only get more complex from here onwards as the two stories become intertwined with each other, both of which can be interesting in their own ways. Yakuza 0 all around has a pretty good plot, easily one of the best in the series in my opinion, but a major problem I have with it is the amount of over-explaining done before it gets to the point, whether it's Kiryu's or Majima's storyline. There is so much chatter in this game where it isn't needed, especially on Kiryu's side. In fact, I found his story to be the weaker of the two. You spend way too damn long getting accustomed to the real estate life. You frequently encounter Lieutenant Kuze, who has a begrudging hatred towards Kiryu for humiliating him in front of the family, which makes him one of the more compelling villains in the series, but you really wonder how much more he can take. It wasn't until the last quarter of the game or so that I started getting highly invested in Kiryu's story. I was intrigued enough beforehand to see what was going to happen, but this was where I thought Kiryu's plot really should have focused on. It greatly shows the relationship between Tachibana and Kiryu, and without spoiling, there's a certain scene that was very hard for me to watch, but I still couldn't look away. Yakuza 0 can be a pretty depressing game at times, but I think where the plot shines is the relationship between Majima and Makoto. Majima may not be the lunatic he'll eventually become, but he still has a cynical sense of humor that can be pretty funny at times. I like how great of a boss he is towards his cabaret staff despite him being forced to manage them so he can pay off Yakuza debts. I do want to punch Sagawa every time I see him though, because he's always equipped with some big speech that calls back to the over-explaining problem I already talked about. Anyway, Majima is just as lovable of a character even without that hint of insanity, and his interactions with Makoto are easily the best parts of Yakuza 0's narrative for me. I liked seeing these two become more and more attached the longer the game goes on, and seeing Majima care so deeply about one person is something I wouldn't expect him to do. I know it won't be the only time this happens in the series, but I'll jump the gun and say that this is the most believable relationship he's had, outside of his one with Kiryu at least. This was one of the main things that made me find Majima's plot far more engaging than Kiryu's. Makoto, as I mentioned earlier, is far too innocent to hate even when she has her moments of recklessness, and it's good that she's able to stick up for herself without being affected by her sight disadvantage. Kiryu sort of gets stuck with Nishiki, who once again can be a humongous crybaby, and his loyalty to Kiryu is questionable. But like in Kiwami, I do understand where he's coming from, and I enjoy the teamwork between him and Kiryu during gameplay. This heat action here, one of my all-time favorites. No matter which story I think is superior, both of them lead to a pretty awesome ending and an even better post-credit scene that I dare not give away. It's heartwarming, sad, and a nice tie-in to games set later in the timeline. The story overall has some slow moments, and I mean extremely slow, but when it's good, it's really good. Though like I said, the over-explanation can be a huge issue to me, and when it happens, the game drags hard. At least when I do get to the gameplay, I have just as much fun with it as I do with Kiwami. Just like the last time we looked at a Yakuza game, you run around a small but packed overworld, while also beating up anybody that dares challenge you. Only this time, on top of playing as Kiryu in Kamurocho, you also get to play as Majima in Sotenbori. Each character has 2 story chapters dedicated to them at a time, meaning you might want to consider doing as much as you can before moving on to the next character, because you don't get the ability to swap freely until the point of no return at the end of the game or after finishing it. Kiryu plays and controls basically how he did in Kiwami, and making their debut in the series are the different fighting styles. I already went through these in the Kiwami video, so I won't go too in depth with them, although I noticed that the rush style wasn't quite as fast. You have to upgrade it so that it moves more quickly at the 3rd heat gauge bar. Oh yeah, that's also different from Kiwami. Instead of having one long bar with a red tip at the end, both characters can fill up to 3 bars to perform heat actions, special attacks that do increase damage, including with durable weapons, which I don't think I talked about last time. As you fill more bars, you can unleash more powerful heat actions. Majima has his own fighting styles to play around with. First off is the thug style, nothing too complicated, just basic punches and kicks with balanced power and speed. Does the job just fine. But then you'll shortly get the slugger style that brings in Majima's iconic baseball bat. While you don't have a lot of combos to work with, it has no problem dealing massive amounts of pain to bad guys, especially with heat actions. But when you get the breaker style afterwards, congratulations, you've snapped the game in half. It is ridiculously broken. It's fast, it has great coverage, and it may not hurt as much as the bat, but it very quickly builds up. Just one combo was enough to drain a lot of health from the bosses. Look at this fight here and see how quickly I win by using only the breaker style. You see, it's crazy strong. The only style that's not accessible through the story are the legendary styles for Kiryu and Majima. I'll go further into that later. You probably won't get very far either way without accumulating that sweet, sweet dough. Seriously, money is used for damn near everything in this game. Even the upgrades, which can go for ludicrous prices as you scale up the branches. And if you happen to have a surplus of cash, you can literally throw money away to distract enemies in case you don't feel like fighting right now. If all you're worried about is just goofing off and checking out the resorts, money will not be an issue to you at all. The amount you're asked to pay is pocket change. No, the most expensive things to buy are definitely the upgrades, and you'll most likely need them to get through the tougher parts of the game. Certain people will even teach you moves that were previously locked, but they'll only do so if you purchase enough upgrades, so get saving, sonny. You've got a number of ways to earn money outside of the story, however, some methods better than others, I'd say. There are the street fights, of course, and you can spend completion points to scrape more cash out of them. You can gamble your way to the top either at a casino or betting on cat fights that use rock, paper, scissors mechanics. Kiryu's got his own real estate business to run and collect money from. Majima can manage another cabaret club and get a steady intake there. Or there's my personal best method, challenging Mr. Shakedown. This is kinda like the predecessor to the Majima Everywhere mechanic from Kiwami. Kamurocho and Sotenbori are constantly terrorized by two hulking brutes that love to take people's money in exchange for not beating them up. These guys can be found in random parts of each city, and Kiryu and Majima will always refuse to back down from a fight, so you will engage in combat every time they find you or you find them. Mr. Shakedown is able to deal an insane amount of damage to you, sometimes taking down almost all of your health, meaning you absolutely cannot breeze through him. My best technique with Kiryu was to switch to the rush style so I can avoid his attacks easily, wait for Mr. Shakedown to lunge towards me, throw a few light punches, follow up with a strong attack, and then back away, occasionally using a heat action. Keep repeating this and you'll eventually win. With Majima, I ended up using the thug style to do the same thing, but then switched to the slugger style to do this one heat action that hurts a little and knocks over Mr. Shakedown, afterwards inflicting some pot shots while he's on the ground, again using different heat actions now and then. These two methods are slow and it can take a while to beat Mr. Shakedown, but I found it to be the safest way of dealing with him. If you have any other suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Substories are once again available, however, if you need a break from all the fighting, and I actually find these to be better in Yakuza 0 than they are in Kiwami, perhaps the whole series. Kiwami substories weren't bad or uninteresting at all, but they did get a little samey after a while. Kiryu gets conned, and you have to fight your way out of trouble. Zero substories are a bit more involved. In typical Yakuza fashion, this is where the game tones down the seriousness to give you a silly little side story that requires Kiryu or Majima to humiliate themselves or get put into dangerous situations, all in order to help some random stranger. It doesn't really sound that different to Kiwami, but some sub-stories may throw a curveball to make it far more memorable than a lot of other Yakuza games. If you asked me to name a sub-story from Kiwami or any other Yakuza game, I would struggle hard, but I could name several in Yakuza 0. I remember Kiryu having to pretend to be a producer and fool the director, but you gotta make sure you know the lingo on set and get the right things for the shoot. I remember helping a dominatrix learn to not be so nice to customers looking to be punished for pleasure. I remember Majima encountering a total Karen several times before she gets what's coming to her. I remember him getting someone's daughter back from this cult that's actually a scam. I remember Kiryu assisting a Michael Jackson knockoff with his latest music video that's being directed by not Steven Spielberg. And you do that by fending off zombies while not Michael Jackson moonwalks down the street.
It's as if we, the players, were involved in the Thriller music video.
Various sub-stories require having to play mini-games a few times in order to unlock them. I spend way too much time winning each track in these godforsaken RC car races, getting all of the parts to even stand a chance, and sometimes it still comes down to a roll of the dice. Screw you, Pocket Fighter, you damn cheater! I couldn't not mention this one strange as hell minigame at a telephone club to pick up girls. You have to choose the most seductive answer available to win the girl over, but they're usually more difficult to hit. In each stage of the call you complete rewards you with a clear view of the lady, even though it's not guaranteed to be her. You can actually start going out with a few girls this way and go on dates with them, like playing pool, but it doesn't benefit you in any way, just self-satisfaction. Now Majima at karaoke singing an 80s love song? Best thing ever. You know what though, at least those minigames are playable, but I for the life of me could not find any enjoyment with the disco dancing minigame. On the surface, it looks like a pretty standard rhythm game, which I am certainly no stranger of. I like me a good rhythm game, and I would consider consider myself to at least be pretty decent at them. But good buttery god did I have a hard time getting used to this. The button timing is beyond strict. I swear there's input delay, which definitely isn't what you want in a rhythm game. And the worst part is that not only do you have to press the right button at the right time, but you also need to move this stupid cursor to reach the button in the first place, and you have to consider the amount of steps you take getting there. More steps means more points. But again, that's assuming you can get the hang of the awkwardly tight window that actually hits the notes. This is far too much to keep track of. I've never had to switch to the easy difficulty in a rhythm game before, and I did eventually work my way to normal and hard, but this minigame is just awful. There were so many times where my opponent somehow got way more points than I did in a short amount of time, and when I did win, it was only just barely. If anybody tells me it's not really that bad and it's actually quite easy, shut up, you are lying out of your ass. But the mother of all side quests has to go to Kiryu's real estate business and Majima's cabaret club. Oh boy, these were something else. Let's start with Kiryu's side. He has to go up against the 5 billionaires who own different parts of Kamurocho, and it's your job to acquire all of their shares. This means coughing up dough to buy out multiple companies so that some of those shares go to you. As you earn more shares, one of the 5 billionaires will challenge you to a duel for a portion of shares you just spent all of that time getting. This is of course all done in minigame form, including that pain in the ass disco game we talked about, and getting a surprisingly difficult high score in Outrun. Then when you get at least 90% of the shares, you'll have a fight with each of the 5 billionaires and a few of their henchmen. Beat them and they'll decide to work for you. Do all of that 5 times, take on the big bad behind everything, and the side quest is finally complete. No joke, this whole thing took me around 15 hours to do, and it got so monotonous after a while. It helped increase my regular intake for sure. I now get at least 1 billion yen after some time has passed, but there's so much management you have to do to get there. You have to choose the right staff for the right job every time before you begin any work. You need to beat up anybody stalling your profits. You need to go out and purchase properties, some of which can be really expensive, so that's more waiting you gotta do while your wages come in. You also need to hire more people by doing sub-stories to improve a property's rank more quickly, allowing you to earn more money. Certain properties won't be available until you befriend someone by coming to see them multiple times, eating truckloads of food, and playing more Outrun. There's a lot to be aware of. My advice would be to not do this all in one go like I did. Maybe beat one of the 5 billionaires at a time and do something else in between. It wears on your brain after doing just a couple of the billionaires, and I can't believe they expect you to do 5 of them. Majima's side quest didn't take me quite as long to get done. The aim is to turn this rundown cabaret club into one of the hottest spots in Sotenbori, and again, there are 5 competitors that wish to shut you down, known as the 5 stars. This one has a bit more going for it, however, ending up being a little more fun for me than the real estate stuff, though it can still be kinda tedious after a while. Preparations need to be made before you open your doors, such as choosing which of your hostesses are going to work today. You can give them a makeover if you want to, because my god, Ai's dress is an eyesore. Ah, there we go, better. Afterwards, you can give one of your top tier hostesses some private lessons for dealing with customers, and damn are Yuki and I utterly adorable. You can't keep using the same hostesses, however. You may need to scavenge around Sotenbori to find women willing to work if you buy them a gift, pay completion points to hire them, or clear sub-stories where the women involved can return the favor. Once you're all set up, you can start your shift as manager. Customers will come in at a decent pace, and you need to pick the right hostess for them based on their preferences. The hostess then squeezes money out of the customers, but they've only got so much stamina, meaning you'll either need to reserve them for later, or correctly read their occasional hand signals when they require help so that they recover. Some customers can be real douche canoes though, and you need to prevent trouble from happening, which I always have such a hard time getting right. Like in real life, I wish I could just swear at them. When the customers are ready to go, you can encourage them to spread the word about the club and improve your reputation. Once the shift ends, your earnings are totaled, the chosen hostesses level up, and you've just got to do that a bunch more times. Same as Kiryu, Majima is able to partner with various companies for a fee to increase popularity, again some of which needing you to bond with certain NPCs before they agree to help. One of these guys is an erotic video store clerk who needs you to watch some videos of real ladies in their underwear. I'm supposed to be feeling aroused, but I'm more distracted at how every one of these videos have the girls play with balloons. Seriously, they're everywhere. Are they trying to make balloons seem sexy? I mean, I don't want to kink shame anyone, but has anybody ever said in their lives, oh yeah, those balloons are so freaking hot?
Well, everybody has things that turn them on. There's always something above all else that gets each of us going, and we should respect whatever that may be. How do these get in my hand?
Okay, moving on. Because of the partner system, that means you don't have to keep doing shifts before one of the 5 stars challenges you to a showdown. Whoever earns the most money during these battles wins, while the loser has to shut down their club. And boy, are they gonna give you hell. They earn money so damn fast and will have no problem spamming their fever time to handicap you briefly while you're trying to do the same thing to them. These showdowns can be somewhat unfair most of the time. In fact, I probably only won them because I didn't spend money on gifts and the like to improve performance. My advice would be to abuse the fever time when you're able to. The hostesses affected can't be touched by your opponent, and money will come in greater numbers. The cabaret business can still be arduous, but I found this to be better overall compared to the real estate stuff, no matter how many chickens Kiryu hires as manager. And no, I'm not kidding, you can actually do that. It's one of the best things about that side quest. Again, I would suggest only building up the cabaret club in increments. These 2 side quests turn into entirely different games when you take them on, but you do get a sweet reward for finishing them. A 4th fighting style is unlocked for Kiryu and Majima, combining elements of the other 3. I thought this was only a thing in Kiwami, but thanks to a few of you pointing it out to me in my review, I wanted to see this through and play around with the legendary styles. If I didn't know these existed, I may not have even bothered with the business quests. Kiryu's one isn't all that different from the dragon style in Kiwami, or I guess it should be the other way around, and Majima plays as if you're the mad dog of Shimano again, zipping back and forth, using your trusty knife, and pulling off some very Majima moves. These were a ton of fun to use, albeit not useful for all situations, but it was worth doing all that crap with the real estate business and the cabaret club just to get them. If you have the patience, I'd say go for it. With everything that Yakuza 0 offers you, I somehow spend more time on the side content than I did the actual story, which is already around 30 hours long. By the time I did everything I felt needed doing on both Kiryu's and Majima's side, after finally finishing the game, I ended up playing for 68.5 hours, and after doing some post-game stuff, my time came to 83 hours. That's the most amount of time I've put into any Yakuza title. I still haven't even finished it 100% yet. There is so much to do in this game. All the sub-stories, the real estate and cabaret side quests, buying upgrades, getting completion points to spend on extra perks. I even did those 2 extra boss fights you unlock by clearing all of the sub-stories. Joe Amon is apparently a reoccurring super boss within the series, something else I didn't know since the Kiwami review. I'll need to boot that game up again and encounter him. They're cool challenges, but I hate how little recovery time you have with Majima's one. And Kiryu's one has a big ass laser that wipes out nearly all of your health. Ugh, what assholes. Nevertheless, if you just couldn't get enough Yakuza 0, there's something else here for you to do.
In theory, it sounds like I should enjoy Yakuza 0 more than Kiwami. It's got better sub-stories, multiple characters to play as, with very deep and complex business mechanics that also contain their own stories, and just more stuff to do altogether compared to Kiwami's more simple nature. So why don't I like this more than Kiwami?
Maybe that's because Kiwami was a more simple game, both in terms of story and the amount of content it had. Yakuza 0 definitely has more going for it, but it may overwhelm you with how much is in the game. I don't think it would be a bad way to start the series, but I simply believe that Kiwami does an overall better job at introducing you. The story can sometimes feel drawn out to me, and not all of Zero's content was necessarily enjoyable. Interesting, but only fun for maybe 20 minutes or so, not hours worth of entertainment. Yakuza 0's pretty cheap these days, so by all means grab it and see what you think. I may disagree about this being the greatest Yakuza game of all time, but I can certainly see the appeal.
And with that, we are done with the 2020 reviews. My god, this year has been rough for everybody, and it doesn't seem like the pandemic's going to be ending anytime soon. I'll be surprised if anybody's in the Christmas mood this time. I always am, but things have been so depressing around the world lately. The least we can do, however, is continue washing our hands, wearing our masks, and pray that 2021 will somehow be better. I've got some plans for it anyway, so I hope that'll maybe cheer you up a little. First up is another journey across Hyrule in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Will this one be better or worse than the original one? We shall see next time. With all said and done, thank you guys for watching, have yourselves a Merry Christmas, and hope to see you again in 2021. I noticed that there was another Yakuza game that's not only... with very deep and complex business... and just more stuff to do altogether compared to Kiwami...